Welcome to the third day of the St. Louis Regional Freightways virtual FreightWeekSTL 2022. I'm Mary Lamey, the Executive Vice President of Multimodal Enterprises for Bi-State Development, which includes the St. Louis Regional Freightway as one of its enterprises. FreightWeekSTL is being held in partnership with the Inland Marine Expo hosted in downtown St. Louis. Yesterday's panel discussion focused on the St. Louis region's role in one of the world's most comprehensive port networks and highlighted how the new container-on-vessel port in Jefferson County, just south of St. Louis, will be part of that network. Earlier this morning, our first session of the day highlighted the global connectivity through Union Pacific's dedicated rail service to the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, the largest U.S. port complex, and also introduced our audience to the operations at the Union Pacific Intermodal Yard in Dupont, Illinois. Today's discussion will focus on the significant investments underway at three other Midwest ports and new infrastructure funding recently secured that will advance several other projects to strengthen these facilities and reinforce important roles in the global freight network. The discussion will highlight how these improvements and others that are being studied by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers will facilitate an increase in barge services and delivery cost efficiencies that drive profitability for the industry. First, we'd like to start with thanking our sponsors, starting with this year's presenting sponsors that include Burns McDonnell, Counsel Contracting, Ameren, Illinois, the Jerry Costello Group, and Crawford, Murphy, and Tilley. Other supporting sponsors are the Boeing Center, Design9, and the Hauser Group. Our associate sponsors for this year include the Southern Illinois Builders Association, Southern Illinois Construction Advancement Program, Terracon, and CDI. Our panelists today include Dennis Wilmsmeyer, Executive Director of America Central Port, Mark Coulter, Vice President, General Counsel for PortKC, Ed Weilbacher, General Manager of Kaskaskia Regional Port District, and John Grothaus, Program Manager for Missouri River Studies, Kansas City District of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Welcome, gentlemen. We're going to start with asking each of you to introduce yourself and your organization. Dennis, we're going to start with you. As I mentioned, he is the Executive Director of America Central Port. Dennis is responsible for the economic development of 1,200 acres of port-owned and operated land, which has experienced $300 million in private investment in recent years. Tell us a little bit about your role and give us a quick overview of America Central Port.
Thank you very much, Mary. I appreciate it. Well, I tell you, just have a great opportunity here to work with an excellent staff and board, all committed for economic development for Southwestern Illinois. Our territory really is fairly small. It's about 210 square miles in size and takes up all of western Madison County, and we go north just a little bit into Jersey County in Illinois. We are located right on the Mississippi River and the Chain of Rocks Canal. We have two river harbors, one the Madison Harbor that's located directly on the Mississippi River just below Locks and Dam 27, and the other is the Granite City Harbor just located north of Locks and Dam 27 on the Chain of Rocks Canal. Our Granite City Harbor is served by Norfolk Southern Railroad. Our Madison Harbor is served by Terminal Railroad Association that's owned by 6 Class I carriers in the St. Louis region. We have 85 distinct companies that call America Central Port District home, and they employ nearly 1,000 individuals here on a daily basis. Economic development is what we do in handling a lot of commodities through barge and rail cars and trucks, and we hire operators to do that. Our daily job is to go out and try to attract companies and businesses to locate here in Southwestern Illinois and take advantage of these great transportation assets. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Thanks, Dennis. Now turning to Ed, who has served as the General Manager for the Kaskaskia Regional Port District for more than a decade. He has been involved with the Kaskaskia River, its watershed, for more than 35 years, working closely with local, state, and federal agencies to improve the river and add to the quality of life in that region. Ed, introduce our audience to KRPD and your role with the organization.
I'm Ed Weilbacher, with the General Manager with the Kaskaskia Regional Port District. We were created 55 years ago by the General Assembly, and we serve 2 2/3 counties in southwestern Illinois, all of Randolph, all of Monroe, and the 2/3 of St. Clair County. Our ports are on the Mississippi River and the Kaskaskia River. The Kaskaskia is navigable up to Fayetteville, Illinois, which is a 36-mile river length that's made navigable by the construction of the Jerry F. Costello Lock and Dam in the late 70s. We are the 15th largest inland port in the country, and we are the 70th largest port overall in the country. We're unique in that we have 5 different terminals that are quite a distance apart from each other, but serve the market in a way that takes advantage of various rail connections, both with the UP and the CN. And we have an excellent working relationship with the Corps of Engineers and the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, which owns 20,000 acres along the Kaskaskia River, of which we're charged as a port district for economic development. So when we have a customer need, we can then transfer that property to the port.
Thanks, Ed. All right, next up is Mark Coulter. He's the Vice President and General Counsel at PortKC, who has been instrumental in defining the strategic vision for the organization, from expansion of Kansas City's riverfront and port facilities to exciting real estate development projects, land reclamation, historic preservation, and untapping commercial opportunities. Mark, please introduce yourself and tell us about the port.
Glad to be with you all today. My name is Mark Coulter. I'm Vice President, General Counsel for PortKC. I've been with the organization for about 11 years, just coming up. PortKC is the Port Authority of Kansas City, Missouri. We cover the entire city limits, so we have a pretty large area in which we operate. Primarily, we focus on 3 basic functions. We have our port terminal activities. We are in charge of developing the riverfront. And then third, we have a fairly large book of business in real estate incentives. So as one of the economic development agencies in Kansas City, we've been instrumental in incentivizing over $1 billion in economic development projects throughout the city, from the preservation of historic buildings to lately we've been focusing quite a bit on industrial space. Frankly, Kansas City isn't building industrial fast enough, and we're building it as fast as we can. So the other exciting project that we have that goes along with our port terminal operations is we are developing a P3 opportunity that we'll talk about a little bit later, but in short, we're going to be the western terminus of the container on vessel program that you all spoke about yesterday. So we've got a lot of exciting things going on. Happy to talk about any of them, from our port terminal operations to our riverfront development, where we are responsible for the first people living on the river in Kansas City in over 135 years, in addition to the first purpose-built women's soccer stadium in the country, and we think possibly the world. So we're very excited about that. We've got a broad range of capabilities, a fantastic staff, professional staff of approximately 14. And we do a lot of good stuff in Kansas City, and we're excited to always talk about it. So thank you for having us.
Thank you, Mark. All righty, next up is John Grothaus, Program Manager of the Planning Branch with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Kansas City District. John has 28 years of experience in planning and implementing water resource projects in the Midwest. His team's projects include levee and floodwall planning and development, channel modifications, as well as navigation, ecosystem restoration, and water supply projects. John, tell us a little bit more about your responsibilities in your current position with the Corps.
Well, I'm the program manager for the Lower Missouri feasibility studies, which includes the study to improve the function and performance of the bank stabilization and navigation project, acronym known as BSNP, which we're talking about here today. Also, I'm for the program manager for the Lower Missouri Flood Risk and Resiliency Study, which is a large feasibility study looking at reducing flood risk and improving resiliency from Sioux City to the mouth. 3 other projects which will be starting up soon are the flood risk studies at Jefferson City, Brunswick, and Holt County, Missouri. And those are all specific flood risk studies, part of the overall flood risk and resiliency study. And thank you very much for this opportunity to participate in this forum.
Okay, Dennis, we're going to start with you. Can you provide a quick overview of the projects recently funded at your facility and their status?
Yes, absolutely, Mary. Thank you very much. So I tell you, a lot of federal dollars out there, even state dollars that are flowing through and following COVID here. But we had some success early on, and some of those projects are kind of working their way through. So we did see a couple of years ago some IDOT competitive freight grant programs. That's Illinois Department of Transportation. We had two projects there that were funded. One was the overall rehab of our general cargo dock at the Granite City Harbor. That was about a $1.2 million project. We tore up pretty much everything right along the face of the wall there along the Chain of Rocks Harbor and re-poured concrete, 12 inches thick of reinforced concrete now, new rail track that's serving that harbor facility. That project is complete. The second component of that IDOT competitive freight program is $2 million now for a new entrance off of Illinois Route 3. Illinois Route 3 touches both Interstate 70 on the south with Interstate 270 on the north and connects those two. So we see about 18,000 cars a day coming past port property. This new entrance will give us immediate access to the heart of our industrial park and create a new first street or a new street along in front of our warehouses that today is not in the best of shape. So that project is out for bid currently, and we're expecting that construction to start here this summer. We have $1 million being spent on a new road right in our industrial park, the heart of our industrial park. That's 4th Street. That came through a Illinois Opportunity Zone grant, coupled with some TIF funds from the city of Madison and port funds that will get that project done. That is under construction currently. We also have seen money that's being put in from the Economic Development Administration, part of U.S. Department of Commerce. So we're under construction now for 2 new parallel rail tracks that serve the Granite City Harbor, and that project ought to be done within the next 30 days. We're also seeing some funds come from EDA to construct some new fertilizer or grain storage bins on the south end of our property at the Madison Harbor. That's under design currently, and we're hoping yet this year to go out for bids and get that under construction early next year. I mentioned just a lot of projects and a lot of opportunities. So a couple of other big ones. Congratulations to SCF, Lewis and Clark. They landed a build grant last year. The first build grant that's been brought here to the port. That's a $25 million grant that will fund improvements at 4 river terminals in the St. Louis area. 3 on the Illinois side, 1 on the Missouri side to fund City of St. Louis Port Authority there. 2 of those on the Illinois side will come, 1 to Granite City Harbor and the other one to the Madison Harbor for major improvements there. And finally, America's Central Port received word here a couple of months ago from the state of Illinois. For the first time ever, the state funding is coming through, and we received $21 million in 3 projects for new improvements and upgrades of old and existing facilities in order to increase efficiency and enhancements there. So great opportunities to take advantage of a lot of federal and state dollars that are out there currently.
Dennis, that's an extensive list, and the roadway projects that you mentioned, I think, are going to have a tremendous value to that first mile, last mile movements of trucks moving in and out of your facility to the Route 3 Expressway and to the interstate system. So thank you for that. Ed, we understand you also received funding for infrastructure investments at the Kaskaskia Regional Port District. What can you tell us about the projects being funded?
Well, we have, and I must preface it with saying that we were able to receive some planning monies so that we could do a strategic plan for our overall port, and also then more specifically planning monies for each location of our terminals. We did KRPD 1, we did Kellogg with Hurricane Ike funding, and then we also got an IDOT grant, a planning grant for KRPD number 2, which led us to many other projects and helped justify the need and also the long-term movement of cargo on the river. Last year, we received a Delta Regional Authority grant for a second entrance road at KRPD number 2, and that was justified through the strategic plan because of the congestion of the harbor and throughout the terminal that we needed that second entrance road. And that's a $250,000 grant that we're going to match it with $400,000 of our own funds. We're also working cooperatively with Corps of Engineers on a Section 107 harbor study, and that's a 50-50 cost share program that will lead to construction. And we believe it's far enough along to say that it's going to have a positive benefit cost ratio. So we should move into construction here in a few years. But you got to do the planning first in order to be able to move forward. We recently also were receiving 2 railroad crossing grants, totaling $600,000. And that's on our KRPD 1 line to improve the safety and crossing these highways. And like Dennis, we did get an IDOT, 2 IDOT grants. We're very excited about that. We have a $10 million one to do a second rail loop at KRPD number 1 because of our outbound need for moving gypsum and fly ash to the market. And that's going to be a major move, 2 million tons of product going outbound. We're matching that with an EDA grant of $4 million. And then we're currently applying for a PIDP program grant of another $10 million to build a phase 2 at KRP number 1 for a rail yard, and then a corridor enhancement of our rail connection between KRPD 1 and Lensburg and improve safety along that corridor. We're also excited to report that we've just been approved for a marine highway designation for the Kaskaskia River as a M3. It's the latest new one added to the system of marine highways. And that's based on a new company to ship coiled steel inbound for processing. And that is estimated to be a minimum of 1.2 million tons of cargo, in addition to the ones I mentioned earlier. As I mentioned too in my introductory remarks, we're partnering with the Corps of Engineers on many things. As part of the Infrastructure Investments Job Act, the Kaskaskia J.F. Costello Lock and Dam received $10.4 million for upgrades that are going to be beginning this year. They're already going out for contracts, and that's to jumpstart some of the economy locally. And we're excited about some of the modifications to the lock and dam that will make it more resilient during high water events, so we can operate more consistently as we see more flooding in the area. And 2 other things, the county received some federal ARPA funds, and we're going to receive $250,000 to improve our bar and grill at Evansville, and for tourism, and also as a safe harbor for boats coming off the Mississippi River, pleasure boats. And lastly, the General Assembly reappropriated $25.7 million for infrastructure and land acquisition for the port that we're going to work on getting those monies released this coming year. So there's lots of things happening, and because we have so many different terminals at different locations, they all need infrastructure upgrades.
Thanks, Ed. That's another extensive list. All right, Mark, we're going to continue to focus on infrastructure. I believe the project you're going to talk about is already well underway thanks to the Maritime Administration grant that you received in 2020. What does that project entail?
Yeah, thanks, Mary. Our project, it's fairly large in scope, but we don't like to do anything small in Kansas City. So what we're focusing on is a 415-acre former steel mill site that we acquired back in 2018. Obviously, it's going to have some environmental challenges as a steel mill, but one of the things that we have, and as we progress through the slides here, I'll kind of talk about it. One of the things we knew that if we were going to build this correctly, we needed to do it right the first time and needed to be very diligent as we put it together. So the first thing we realized is there was probably no one source of funds that was going to cover the cost. We're talking about approximately $500 million construction terminal. So we knew that we were going to need to attract as much private capital as possible. So what the MARAD PIDP grant that we received in 2020 is really going for is helping us plan and get everything in place to make the property as marketable and as attractive as possible to attract those private dollars. One of the parts of our planning that we did was we did had our financial advisor KPMG perform a market study, and the freight volume Nobody exactly knew how much freight was coming in and out of Kansas City, but when we completed it, we recognized that we had almost 500,000 TEUs come through Kansas City every year. And of those 500, and of those, it's actually 498,000 to be specific. But of those 225,000, Kansas City was the final destination. So this was the terminus where they were distributed from. That made this the second largest in the Midwest after Chicago. Obviously, Chicago is very large with 900,000 TEUs. But us coming in second really kind of surprised us a little bit. So we knew that Kansas City was positioned well and that we needed a good facility. So as we move on, as you can see from the site, it's along the river. It has direct interstate access. I-435 runs right by the property. And then there's three Class 1 rail lines that are serviced by the Kansas City Terminal Rail. So really, you found a sweet spot where all three modes come together. And so we knew that we needed to be active in how we did it. And when you put this sort of investment in infrastructure and build these on-ramps, connectors to the global market, you can really show what can be done. I always like to highlight our friends down at the Port of Tulsa, formerly the Port of Catoosa. They started in 1971, I think, with a dock and a dream. And if you look at the comparative picture there, you can see they've already built out 2,500 acres. They've got plans to develop another 2,500. And that's just when you have that access and have that capability and have the drive to make those investments and go out for the dollars. So as we put our port together, and you can see in the artist impression there, as we look to build this facility, we're looking out more than the next investment cycle. We're looking at a generational project, 40, 50 to even 100 years, and making sure that Kansas City is positioned well for the next century. So we're very excited about it. And that merit grant is really giving us the opportunity to kick it off, leverage our funds, leverage federal funds. We're usually receiving something from the state just about every year to keep our operations going. But to think big, we knew we needed to attract the big dollars. And so that's really why we focused so hard on this, on our terminal facility and the Missouri River terminal that we're looking to build.
Okay, John, our audience is primarily shippers and carriers, and reliable freight movement is really key to that audience. We know that you have engaged a focus that is helping improve reliability of navigation on the Missouri River. Tell us about these efforts and the study that's getting underway.
BSNP study currently in progress with the PortKC as the primary non-federal partner, with the support of several stakeholder partners, is an avenue to relook at the system and find a way to improve the function of the BSNP to provide for a more consistent navigation channel. Unlike the Mississippi River, Arkansas, and Ohio River systems, which are controlled by locks and dams, the Missouri River's navigation system is a self-scouring channel comprised of dikes to channelize the flow and revetments to maintain the banks, which is how the navigable channel is achieved. The goal of the BSNP system is to maintain the navigation channel by managing both water and channel dimensions and also sediment, which makes for quite a bit of a challenge given the meteorological and hydraulic uncertainties in the Missouri River system. The preliminary objectives for the study are to improve the performance of the BSNP, considering a wide range of flows, including from drought to flood, to reduce the cost of transporting commercial tonnage, and to improve navigation safety, evaluate operation and maintenance, and to improve overall resiliency and function of the system.
Dennis, what do you think is the secret to the success that you all are seeing securing grants for these important projects?
Boy, a great question, Mary. So I think if we look at it, probably comes down to three things: collaboration, relationships, and a very capable team here at the port. So from a collaboration perspective, it really, I didn't touch base, but you heard several other maritime administration grants, both at Kaskaskia Port District and PortKC. We too have been successful there. And it is that collaboration, I think, with others around us and including with the maritime administration. The build grant that SCF Lewis and Clark was able to get and secure, collaboration with other entities, collaboration without us from a regional perspective all around the area. So I think, really there's kind of a theme now almost with companies or some of these granting and funding agencies that we need to show that there's a better regional approach to all of these grant applications that are coming in. From a relationship perspective, again, I point to the Maritime Administration, Economic Development Administration, part of the U.S. Department of Commerce. We work with them. We understand what they need. We pull those things together, which really kind of leads to that capable team perspective here in the office. I think our staff just does a phenomenal job of understanding and recognizing new requirements that come out with every grant application that's out there. Whether that's GATA or other requirements that might be there for both the state or the federal process, going through the entire proposal, making sure that we're answering all those questions. And then once the grant is awarded, it is following up and making sure we're doing all the reporting requirements, following up for years, sometimes afterwards when the construction project's completed. So it's not just one thing, Mary. I think it's all of those things that come together that really help us, at least, do well in securing not just one grant, but several.
Thanks, Dennis. Mark, PortKC is the non-federal sponsor for the study that John just spoke about. Tell us about that collaboration. And obviously, we know you're working closely with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers based on the progress both your office and the Corps of Engineers has talked about today.
It's really, we've come a long way since when I started at PortKC. We were not operating any terminal. We didn't own a terminal. And there were no barges coming to Kansas City outside of a few private facilities. So one of the things that we had to focus on was making sure that the river was navigable. At the beginning, it was it's always been a perception issue. But one of the things we recognized early on with the Corps and working with them rather than against them or sort of in a parallel universe to them is that you need to make sure that everybody's operating together and that the stream is flowing in one direction. It's been a real pleasure over the past couple of years as we've started to collaborate quite a bit more. And it's kind of culminating with this navigation study, because one of the issues that we had when we were refounding river traffic in Kansas City is the perception of not having enough water was there. And the response was, well, without the tonnage, we can't guarantee the river channel. And without the river channel, we weren't going to be able to secure the tonnage. So we sat down and really started to work with our partners at the Corps. And it really led to the idea of this study, which we are able to get funded on the federal side. And now, as John pointed out, and we've talked about, PortKC is the non-federal sponsor. It's allowing us to serve as sort of the conduit for the private interests that are coming together. So we're really focusing on working with shippers, with the different entities that will use the shippers, the 3PLs, all the different groups that could play a role. We want to make sure that they have a seat at the table as we look at the study, because one of the things that John pointed out early on is we need to know what the real situation is. Nobody had studied navigation on the river, I think it was about 50 years, John, I'm sure can correct me. But it had been a long time. The world has changed. Kansas City's changed. The markets have changed. Supply chains have changed. So we needed to take a look at that. And the only way we're going to be able to make effective progress on it was that collaboration. So we're happy to partner with the Corps and all of our other partners on the project to get that funded and get that studied so we can, again, plan for the future. That's what we're doing.
Thanks, Mark. Ed, working with the Corps of Engineers obviously is key in the delivery and securing the funding for the projects that we're talking about today. We understand there's also collaboration underway between your organization and the Corps, which has received funding for a project of its own within your port district. What does that entail?
We work together with the Corps on so many different levels. I mean, back when they first made the channel navigable, it was a three-way agreement between the Corps, DNR, and the Port District. We were charged with economic development, so we were focused on that. So we look at things, how do we make things better for our terminal operators, for our shippers, for our customers, everyone who comes to the area. And we focus on reliability and sustainability on those things. And the Corps helps maintain that, whether it be dredging the river or maintaining harbors. So our KRPD number 2 location, we saw sedimentation within our harbor, and the program that they have was the Section 107 study. And with that, we did a preliminary request, and they determined that, yeah, it's got possibilities. So we then entered into a cost share arrangement for phase 1. And now it's leading toward that final recommendation where we hopefully go to construction and restore the, we had a fleeting area of over 20 barges in that area. We can't fleet that right now. So hopefully they'll move all that out and we'll be able to refleet the area and make it more a wider channel under the dock and the overhead crane. The Corps has been very responsive. We've had several meetings with our industry people, and they also attested to the fact of the need and how we can be more efficient and provide a lower cost of service to our customers. So that engagement is very helpful. We also partner closely with our economic development people, and we're charged as a port, like Dennis and others, to develop economic opportunities for within our region that we serve. And so we try to do that any way possible. So we contract out our services to our terminals, and I focus on economic development opportunities, whether it be through state agencies or other sources of funds. The Corps also was able to receive some additional funding because of our support for them at the locking gate.
Alrighty, thanks, Ed. Dennis, your port is in the levee protected American bottoms. Significant investment has been made to strengthen the levees to higher current standards. And I believe the Corps just got an additional funding related to that project. Do you have an update?
Yes, absolutely. So the Corps did get a big infusion of cash, one of these last rounds here. And that it's just about 80 or $90 million that will go in to fund the levee system. I think probably, Mary, more timely even is here in late April. Madison, Monroe, and St. Clair counties in southwestern Illinois just announced that the 100-year certification or accreditation of the levees has been completed. So all the work that has been they've been going on for the last 15 years has come to a conclusion for 100-year certification or accreditation standards by FEMA, which is just tremendous, because that whole area, that's a 65-mile levee system that protects 288,000 people, 4,000 businesses, 56,000 jobs, 111,000 acres of industrial and farmland property, and $13.3 billion in assets. And that's a lot of industry that's located in that area that previously was threatened to be decertified or deaccredited by FEMA. So a huge accomplishment there by the locals, going to really the Illinois legislature and getting some things done locally that would have taken a very long time. In fact, how those counties were able to pull everything off and do it collectively through a sales tax, taxing themselves to raise the dollars to get it done, is truly an incredible story. And they did it under budget and in less than about 22 years sooner than if only federal funds had been used. And all that time, and had it not, had it taken the full 22 years, that would have been higher flood insurance rates and just a whole lot of opportunities for companies not to locate here. But gladly and thankfully today, that system is accredited, and continued work on the levee system is going on to bring it up to the full authorized level. But today, things are very good.
So Dennis, congratulations to you, to the leadership of Southwestern Illinois. This collaboration has been recognized nationally. And so now it's a time to celebrate. Alrighty, gentlemen, is there anything else we haven't touched on that our viewers today should know, or final comments? Dennis, we'll start with you.
You know what? I think hearing everybody here today, it's just fantastic through the planning process and the studies that John had talked about, and Mark and everything he's got going on at PortKC, and Ed as well at Kaskaskia. I'd say all these things, especially from an infrastructure perspective, is efficiency. Products not sitting. We need to keep product moving. Everybody's seen the ships off of the coast of LA and Long Beach. That's not good for our economy. That's not good for our country. And really, inland ports have had similar situations, but on a much smaller scale for a long time. We're seeing dollars flow now from the federal and state governments to help fund those port facilities on the inland river perspective, which is fantastic. From our standpoint, it's all about efficiency. So that conveyor belt that doesn't move quite as much as it should, or the dump pit that just doesn't, it's not working correctly today, and pulling that product out of that dump pit to move it to barges. All those things from an aging infrastructure perspective really attack that efficiency component. And I believe that the better we can become from an efficient perspective, the better we're going to all be off.
Alrighty, John, final comments.
To try and help the shippers and help the cause of navigation, we're looking at a variety of measures, including structural, operational, and non-structural. Structural measures include the evaluation of changes to the configuration of the channel and better ways to maintain it, design or engineering, if you will. Operational measures to look at flow targets downstream of Kansas City for adjustment, maybe some support or additional dredging during certain flow regimes, and additional channel monitoring and marking. Non-structural measures look at including the evaluation of revisions to the reference plane that the structures are built to, tributary flow considerations, and actions that non-federal partners can pursue. And this study, this partnership really gives us the power and the leverage of the non-federal partners, including public and private organizations that have the expertise to help us perform the study adequately and make sure that no stone is left unturned in the evaluation of ways to improve navigation on the Missouri River.
Thank you, John. Mark?
Yeah, I want to circle back to something Dennis brought up because I thought it was really present. He mentioned that he brought up the backups at the Port of LA Long Beach, and I was out there with my family this summer. This is a little anecdotal, but I think it really goes to the point. I could count 13 cargo ships in the holding pattern off the coast of Huntington Beach, which is pretty far south. And each of those ships had $135,000 a day holding costs. So that's over $1 million. I went to law school, so I'm not good at math. But I do know that adds up quite a bit. And that's what's leading to the inflation that we're seeing. We're seeing costs go up across the board because we found out during COVID, our supply chain system was not very resilient. You have one or two issues at one or two places and the entire thing can come crashing down. So one of the things that we're focusing on, both with our large project and our collaboration with the Corps, is making sure that Kansas City is positioned perfectly as the tail end of the supply chain, as I kind of talked about before, to make sure that we're as efficient as possible getting things in and getting things out. That's one of the reasons that we're focusing on such a large project. And one of the reasons that we focused so hard on collaborating with the Corps to ensure that the Missouri River is viable and navigable. Going back to 2015, the first year we shipped tons out of Kansas City, we shipped out 13,000 tons. The total Missouri River tonnage was 330 tons. In 2020, we had a bit of a down year. We only had about 60,000 tons, but the entire Missouri River tonnage system was almost 1 million. We've seen tremendous growth, and that's all pre-COVID numbers. So we know that that's going to go up. As the tonnage is coming to Kansas City, the containers are coming to Kansas City, and we just need to make sure that we're working with all of our partners, whether it's the folks in Jefferson County, whether it's the U.S. Corps of Engineers, whether it's our friends at Plaquemine Ports down in Louisiana. We need to make sure that we're positioned well so that Kansas City is not a holdup in the supply chain, because at the tail end of it is just as important as the beginning of it on the coast. So we're excited to continue this collaboration, continue making these investments, and really bringing the whole system together to make sure that it's more resilient for the future.
Thanks, Mark. Ed, final comments.
Yeah, at Kaskaskia, we look at certainty and reliability. That's our shippers want to know. Is it going to be reliable, and how certain is it going to operate? And so we have to anticipate in advance any future need so we can start get those into motion, because it takes time to make things happen. And we heard loud and clear after some of our floods that we needed to raise the lock arms, the lock and dam. So we pushed hard for that, and that's now going to get funded. So those are the kind of things that the port does to be responsive to the industry, make sure that we're going to operate through all kinds of water levels. And then anticipate too in the future, some future needs of how you might grow the port, where, as Dennis said, to infrastructure needs to be upgraded to be more efficient. And we're looking at those things now. And I think we got a strong path ahead of us for responding to our customers and our tenants and our peers.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Thank you, gentlemen. It's clear from today's discussion that our ports are playing an important role in the global freight network, and the infrastructure funding recently secured will strengthen these facilities and ensure they are prepared for future growth. It's also evident that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is supportive of this impending growth and taking various steps to improve the reliability of our waterways and the equipment that supports the movement of barge traffic along them. The investment occurring today will help to deliver cost efficiencies that will drive profitability for the barge industry and contribute to the future success. I'd also like to give a final thank you to our sponsors for FreightWeekSTL 2022. Their support makes it possible for us to continue to deliver the great content that is a hallmark of this annual conference. Freight Week continues tomorrow with the release of 2023 priority project list and our panel, which focuses on the partnership between Kansas City and the St. Louis region that highlights the importance of reconstruction and adding capacity to Missouri's statewide I-70 corridor. We hope you can join us and encourage you to share links to any of our Freight Week content with others who may be interested.